Hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar session that is going to be about memoQ's project templates. My name is Helga Szabó. I am part of the digital marketing team here at memoQ, and I'm going to be the host of today's webinar. But before we would start the actual session, let me share a few housekeeping information with you. So the presentation itself is going to be 40 to 45 minutes long. That is going to be followed by a 10 to 15 minutes long Q&A session. Please, if you have any questions, use the Q&A pane to ask those questions. Do not use the chat to do so. You can see the screenshot of the Q&A pane down below on this slide. Due to the limited time frame, it might happen that we will not be able to answer all of your questions in live, but we will provide answers later to the missed ones in a written form on a Q&A sheet, along with the link of the recorded webinar, approximately 1 week after the webinar. And the webinar, as it is going to be, and it is already recorded, the recording will be available on our YouTube channel and on our website. And now let me introduce our presenter for today. So we have Ines Babido with us here today. Ines has a great experience in the translation industry. She joined memoQ in 2023 as a technical solution specialist for the Americas Hub. In this role, she worked closely with clients to understand their specific needs and help them get the most out of the tool through customized training. After relocating to Hungary, she joined the Training Hub as a full-time trainer, and I have to say, she does it wonderfully. And with this, Ines, I give the mic to you.
Thank you, Helga. Welcome, everybody. So, as Helga mentioned, we'll be talking about memoQ project templates today. And before we jump right in, let me go a bit through the agenda. I will start by presenting to you the concept of project templates, and I will then show you how I create a project from a template on the web. And right after that, we'll have a look at how everything was configured in the background, and we'll conclude with the key benefits of using project templates. But I think that by then you will have figured it out on your own. So let's jump right in. Concept of project templates. If you're not familiar with project templates, they are basically the backbone of customization and automation in memoQ. They are predefined configuration that will help you to fast-track the creation of your local and online projects in a structured way. Here, it's key to remember that project templates can be used both for local projects and online projects if you work collaboratively. They are highly customizable to your needs, so you can just go back in at any point, just keep improving them as you need. And they are designed to simplify the project creation and to help you automate some of the project management tasks that you would otherwise do manually. The ultimate goal, you probably understood it by now, is to ease the project management process and to boost your efficiency in that regard. So without further ado, I will be sharing with you how to create a project from a template on the web. And for that, I will stop my slideshow and we will go straight to my projects. All right, I've decided to show you how to use a project template on the web today, but everything that I'm going to be doing here, creating a new project, can absolutely be done on the desktop as well. So, as you probably already know, to create a project from your project dashboard, you will have to click on Create New. Once I click on Create New, I have the option right from the start to decide if I want to go with an online project or if I want to go with an online project from template. If you don't use template yet, you're probably going with this option, and you see that you have a few steps to go through. There are basically 6 here with quite a few things to go through. Now, if I choose to go with the online project template, I only have 4 elements to go through. The second one here is to select the template that I want to use. It already gives me the one that I want to show you today here, because obviously to get ready for today, I have tested a few things. And so it suggests always here the latest templates that you've been using. If you don't find here the template that you want to be using here, you can just browse through your templates If you don't have any templates yet, you will discover that memoQ have a few already pre-configured for you that you could use from the start. If you want to customize them further, that's also possible. You'll have to clone them and create your own from there. So I'm happy with this one. We'll select it. And as you can see, it's already showing me that it will be from English to French and Spanish. These are the predefined languages inside the template I have created. But if I want to add more, I'll be able to in this third step. Properties. Project name is usually the first thing that I will choose here. But as you can see, I already have a few placeholders here. I see the date, today's date, so October 16th. And I also have a placeholder for client, domain, and project. What are these? We will explain that in a second. But before, as I mentioned, source and target languages. Source language in my template is already configured for English Canada, and I also have French Canada and Spanish Mexico. If for some reason here I only wanted to create my project for French, I could just take Spanish off, or the other way around, if I want to add multiple new languages, I can also pick them from the list. But for today, we'll stay with only 2. It's probably enough. Now, the most interesting part here, metadata. Metadata, you've probably seen it every time that you create a project. It is not compulsory to use them, but you have 4 of them by default: the project, client, domain, and subject fields. And in here, the way that I have configured my template, I absolutely have to give a value to these 3 fields because they are used for the project name. And this is a way to systemize my naming convention so that my projects don't have a random name every time. If I want to be structured, consistent, then that's the way that I would make it. So we'll give it a name here. I'll just call it, why not, webinar, with a B is better. Then I will use client A. You see, I have a predefined list in this case. We will discover later when I show you my configuration, why is it that I have a predefined value set here and where I didn't have any here. And you also see that if I forget to put any value that was required as per at least the project name here, memoQ will advise me here to add something more. The field is required. So I will go with client A. And I also need to define a domain. So the name of my client list here, as you might have understood, I made something very simple, client ABCD. You could use it in any way you would like, whatever makes sense to you. If it's the name of a requester, if it's the name of a department or a client, you name it. Same for domain. I've decided to use it, but you absolutely don't have to use any of the fields that are not relevant to you. And the list here depends on what I input. So I will just go with, why not, human resources for today. And of course, even if these are not required, if I want to add a subject or a description, now is the time to do so. But if not, I'm done. I just need to click on create and my project is created. All right, this is how it should be. So once you have created your project, usually you have a lot more things to do. First one, importing a document. That one, using a project template will not prevent you from having to import documents, because at this point, this is absolutely a manual task. In my case, of course, if you had a content connector or anything, it could also be used in that way. But for now, I will import my own document. So let me just drag and drop one. Okay, here we are. So I'm importing one document, and by default, because I have 2 languages in my project, the document will be imported for both languages, so for French and for Spanish. Let me just do import all. And that is it. Usually, when you create a project without a template, you will also have to decide what kind of resources, linguistic resources, you wish to attach to your project. Well, in the case when you're using a template, you don't necessarily have to do that manually anymore. Of course, the option remains. You could add anything manually to your project at any time. But the whole idea here is that if I go to resources, I will see that I already have a lot of them already selected for my project. Let's have a look at them. So for French, I have 7 translation memories added and 7 for Spanish as well. You didn't see me adding any translation memories manually, right? And that's because everything was pre-configured in my template. Basically, I have put in my template, we'll see it in very shortly, that I have a working TM that's being created for this specific project. I also have a master TM that is for my client B and for my domain for 2025. So all of my marketing projects for client B will go in this one for the whole year until 2026 becomes in use. And all of the other ones are referenced, and we will see how is it that they were added automatically to that project. And same goes for Spanish. This doesn't only apply to translation memories. I can also do the same with term bases, which I did. So for French and Spanish, we have the client B term base that's being used. And we also have a reference one that's general, just as a reference if ever it's needed. And when it comes to LiveDocs, I also have a LiveDocs for client B 2025, because I have decided that there should be a LiveDocs in here, an annual one. So if I had one already in 2024, it would also be here added because I made it that way. These are the things that are already here. A little more about what is already in my project without me having done anything at this point. Reports. Because with a template, when you use a project template, you have the possibility to add automated actions. One of them being, for example, asking it to create an analysis report. So as soon as I import a document, memoQ will know it will be triggered to create a report every time there's a new document imported. And that's what happened here. That's why I have an analysis, and it says that it was created by an automated action just a few minutes ago. So that's another thing that I didn't have to do manually. memoQ did it for me through the template. Same happens with translations here. If I'm in this tab, I see my 2 documents, the one for Spanish, the one for French. And as you can see, I already have someone assigned for the role of translator in Spanish with a deadline already defined. Same for an ICR user, which is in-country review, the in-country review tool of memoQ, with a deadline that's for later in time. Now here, the translator for French, I've decided not to make it an auto-assignment. I've decided that I would myself choose someone from the list. Let's assign it to myself. And just for this document, I can also use a deadline, do whatever I need at this point manually. But as you see, I could have also said, if this project or for this specific kind of domain or client, I know for a fact that Ines is always the one that has to work on it, then I might as well just auto-assign using my template so that I don't even have to think about the whole assignment of my people into that project. There is more that I'll be able to show you in a minute, but before we go on with the project here, I will go to the configuration. So we'll go to my third part right here, where I will show you how I have configured the template that I've just used. So let's go to memoQ right here. I will simply close this. And in order to show you, I will start from the beginning, I guess it will be easier. In order to show you my templates, I have to open my resource console, and I have to go to project templates right here. The one that I've created specifically for our webinar today gets the name webinar templates, and I will just click edit to show you what's inside. As you see, I have a lot of them already here, and you also have the configured one by memoQ that I could use and just clone to make it my own. In my case, we'll use this one, and I'll just edit to show you everything that's in there. Okay, let me center this for you. So basically, in a project template, I am able to add and configure almost all the resources, like heavy or light resources that you see in that list. There's a few exceptions, but most of them can be pre-configured into my template. Just so whenever there's a project, I don't have to go and add all of these things manually, either me or even my linguist down the road when they have to add themselves a few things. So first, as we mentioned before, I have my project name. The project name will depend on the naming convention that I've decided upon. So here I've decided to use use placeholders, and this is the list that I can pick from. If I use any of the first four, I will be able, after the fact, to add a value directly when I'm creating my project, as I did naming my new project Trying Again. But I can also create predefined values, and that can be very powerful, because if you have a lot of people creating projects, you are at risk that someone make a typo at some point. And these can be a bit frustrating, because if it is not the same name as it usually is, then memoQ, instead of using the existing resources, will just create a new one. So having a predefined value list just avoids any mistakes. So to create a predefined value list, I click on this little button, and you see that I can add any values to here. I don't know, if I wanted to add memoQ and add it here, I can just add it. I can also make it the last one in the list if I want. I can replace or delete any fields, any values at any time, and just click OK. Same for any of those four. I've decided to make two, one for domain, one for client. But again, you don't have to use them, or you can use just one of them or all of them. That is really up to you. You have to remember that these metadata fields are used for the naming convention of your project, but also for the naming convention of your resources. So we will also have a look at that very soon. As we saw, my source language was English because I defined it here, and I also predefined two languages, but I could predefine multiple here. If ever I always have large multilingual projects, I can put them all here. And as you saw, we can always remove or add more. Let's go to online project settings. If you are familiar with project creation in memoQ, you might remember that this page comes up every single time that you create an online or a local project without a template. It is basically the online project settings that you have to go through to decide if your users will have track changes enabled when they go into a specific role, or if there are any confidentiality measures like disabling any machine translation plugins, etc., etc. And also your in-country review configuration. If you are using an in-country review user, you get to decide if this user will be able to comment only, or if they will be able to review, like edit the text and also comment. So I could decide that this will be my ICR config here allows for commenting and editing, and this one is just comment only. These are configurations I had pre-configured, and I'm just adding to my template so that I don't have to define them later. There's more. If I'm here again in the online project settings, I get to decide if my users will be allowed to check out a project copy, which means that if they have the desktop application, they will be able to use it for their project. If this is unticked, they will only be able to use the web to access a project on my server. There's more. Here, I can also define if the users are allowed to export bilingual or final document through memoQ, so either desktop or the web. And here I've made it that they won't be able to, because I want to keep full control. I don't want anyone to be able to export anything from the server. I'm the only one in charge here, and whoever is working with me as a project manager or an administrator. Again, this is all up to you, but know that those options are here. And if you have just one scenario that you follow every time, then there's like a million reasons that you would want to use a template, because you don't have to think about it again. You just fix it here once, and then that is all. The same happens with all the notifications that can be sent out. You could decide that these, for example, are not so relevant to you, so you untick them, and you untick or tick whatever is used and useful here, and you just do it once. You don't have to go back every time for every project. Let's move to LiveDocs. Now that I'm in LiveDocs, I get to see that memoQ will automatically add a LiveDocs corpora to my projects. If it already has an existing corpora for my clients, mine was client B, with the year 2025, it was the case, it added it automatically. But on top of that, I've also asked my template that whenever I use it, if ever there are any other LiveDocs corpora already existing for that client, I want them to be added as a reference as well. If you select multiple metadata here, then the rule that applies here is and. It has to have the same client and the same domain. It's not and or, it's and. So I've decided to go with client because usually if I create a LiveDoc corpora, it will be for their reference file, and it doesn't really matter for which domain it was. But if it does to you, if it does matter, you could also create your LiveDocs in a way that they do contain domain. And this is if I want a LiveDocs corpora to be created or added automatically if it's existing already to all of my projects. If that's not something you want to do, you don't have to set anything in LiveDocs right here. For translation memories, though, you do want to create something. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with the concept of working and master translation memories, but I'll just give you a little reminder here. In memoQ, you have three types of TMs. You have the reference TMs, which will be added to projects for reference only, for consultation only, will not be fed with any new content throughout the translation project. And I could pick any here in the list if I want to. If I select them manually, they will be added to every single of the projects that are created with this template. So reference TM here will be in all of my projects, and I'm happy with that. If I wanted, though, to depend on the client or domain or subject, then I would rather use this section here, where, again, as in the LiveDocs, it will automatically add the translation memories that match the metadata of the project. When it comes to working and master, you don't have to necessarily use working and master separately. They could be one and only TM as in translation memory. But if you do, you can create a naming convention, a naming rule for your working TM. And here I've made it that it's based on the client, domain, and project, which means that it will be a new working translation memory for every project. So that's my temporary translation memory, if you may. And whenever the project reaches the end of the whole workflow, the content of this working through the XLIF will be sent to the master TM. That's something that I can do manually, but that's also something that I will be able to automate using automated actions, which we will see not so long, quite soon. My master TM here has a slightly different naming convention. It has, again, the client and the domain. I could have just client if I want all the domains to be in the same TM, but I've also made it annually, just so if I want to easily do some maintenance on my TMs and delete anything that's past 3 years, then I can easily find them and delete what needs to be deleted. So this is the naming convention that I've used. So you see that those metadata that we've discussed in the name and languages tab are also being used in here. So you have to think about your structure, how you wish to use those metadata fields. And if they're not relevant, then you would rather go with, I don't know, WTM for working translation memory, and then you just add the subject. That's also up to you. You really do the way you feel it. You can also test this because, as I mentioned quickly at the beginning, nothing that you do here is set in stone. You can always come back to it and change whatever you want if it doesn't exactly fit your needs or your needs changed and you need to edit it. The one thing to remember though is that whatever changes you make here only apply to the new projects you create with that template. It's not retroactive. So you have to keep that in mind. Okay, let me go to turn-based now. For turn-based, it's usually not as drastic of a creation because we usually go by client. So here I've made it that memoQ will create a turn-based by client. And if ever it already exists when I create a project, then instead of creating a new one, it will just use the existing one. I've also made it that if there's any other that has the same client metadata, they should also be added as a reference. And I've decided to add myself the general one as a reference TM, which will be in every single project by default. But I'm not using it for QA. I'm only using the main turn-based here for my quality assurance later. Good. Along the way, if you have any questions that are for a specific element that I've shown, feel free to use the Q&A section. We will get to your questions very soon. In settings is where you will want to, how would I say, select, configure light resources that you have previously configured. Let's say that you work with very specific segmentation. Maybe you put in place some segmentation rules, or you have a very specific QA settings for French, but not for Spanish. Or you also have some a non-translatable list that you would like to use. Well, any of these obviously can be added manually to your projects, but if you know for a fact that you're going to need them for all of them, might as well put them in your template. So as you see here, you get the same symbols and icons as you have in the resource console. So if you don't really know where to find anything, you have those as a little reminder. In the segmentation rule, as you see, I have a specific one that I've called segmentation for English, but I don't have any for French or Spanish, so they remain default. If I go to my QA settings, same. I have a custom QA for French, but I don't for Spanish, so I left the default on. And I can come back here anytime. As soon as I create something new or I keep editing configuration or settings, I can come back here and just add a new one or exchange it for another one. Let me now go to the language independent resources. On this particular panel here, you have a lot of information. You basically have the TM settings and LiveDocs settings. Again, I've chosen a custom one because I had one already configured. I don't have anything for those four, so I've left it as it was. I have a non-translatable list, as I said, so I have added it here as my primary. And most importantly, filter configurations. You know that when you import a document with the normal import options, it will always take all the editable content and import it for translation. But if you don't want that to happen because you have specific needs, let's take the example of a PowerPoint. You have the option to create filters to make sure that you import a PowerPoint with slides only, for example, because your client doesn't want you to import any of the speaker's notes or comments or sections, you name it. And in that case, you can predefine a filter configuration. And instead of using it when you import your document, because you don't want to have to go through the list, it's a few more clicks, you can, in your template, add the filter configuration as the new default. So here, if I define it as PPTX, I'm telling it that whenever my file has the extension PPTX, it should be using this specific filter. But if my PowerPoint is called whatever, and I've added at the end underscore only slides with the same case sensitivity here, dot PPTX, because that's the extension, then memoQ will know that instead of using the filter that I've configured for this one, it will know to use another one here. This one does not include the comments, the sections, the master slides, etc., etc. This one does. because it's my normal PPT import. Same for docx, same for Excel, you name it. All the filters that you usually use, if you know that you will need to use the same one every time, or you have exceptions and you want to play with the path name or the file name, then you can. And you get to add them here in this list. Last but not least, into the settings, I can also define, if I use any machine translations plugins, I can define them right in here. And as you see, I have decided to use memoQ AGT for French and for Spanish. And you'll get to see that from actually today, if you are in Canada, and also I think anyway, from tomorrow, all the clouds will be, the public clouds will be updated to 12.0. Mine was updated today. So you will get to see that memoQ AGT is now possible automated actions in a template, which was not the case before. So we'll get to see it in action today. And that is it for my settings. Now, when it comes to people, I will also be able here to say, as you saw when I presented my project earlier, that whenever, for example, I have Spanish projects, I want them to be assigned to Lucelena as a translator. And I also want to have the French ones always with my ICR, because I have this subject matter expert that doesn't know memoQ, to whom I've given an ICR access so that they can use the tool to quickly comment or edit the translation that was made by whoever will be on the project. And last one, automated actions. And that's where the full power comes into play as well. Because if you've never used them, you will get to realize how much it is that you can automate. And whatever you automate means that you don't have to do it manually at any point. So here you have the full list of available triggers. It means that at these steps of the workflow, you get to decide if you would like memoQ to run an automatic action. I've created a few. That's why you see that some of them are in bold. And so, for example, here, after document import, I've asked memoQ to run a pre-translate. And of course, whenever you add an action, you always get some settings. For the pre-translate one, you probably know this page. It is the exact same as when you run it manually. I get to decide what is it that I want to pre-translate, what are the results that I wish to insert in the grid, from what corpora or what TMs, if I want to use machine translation or not, etc., etc. I've also asked it to pre-translate with AGT. So anything that hasn't been translated before and couldn't be found in my own resources, I have asked AGT to take over and to offer me a translation, and I will be able to review it. I will also have an analysis report created. We saw it quickly earlier. It was there. As soon as I import a document, it is creating the analysis report. I have also added this little functionality that I really like that's called populate number-only segments, which can be quite effective depending on the kind of content that you have to translate. But basically, it says it in the name, number-only segments. It also includes when you have URLs or phone numbers, emails, they can be already imported into the grid for you if you select this option here. And last one, auto-assign documents to users. This is why I had Luce as my translator for Spanish. And this is also why I had ICR user for my reviewer one for French. I've also added some automated actions for in case of any reimport, if ever there's an update coming up and I would like to make sure that whenever I reimport a document because I suddenly received version 2 of a document that was ongoing, I will run xtranslate so that it is pre-translated from the previous version that was being translated before the update came up, and then pre-translate fully from all of my resources, use AGT if there's nothing. And I'm also creating a snapshot just for some record history that I want to keep. The rest here, I haven't added anything until document completes workflow. At this stage, I've decided that I wanted the target document to be exported automatically and added to my server because I want to keep a record of it there. You might have a lot of other ways to do, but I've decided to make it this way so that I will find it under the tab Files. Let me show it from here. From this folder here, Files, I will be able to see the files that were downloaded to my server. Let me go back to this here. And let me just skip to this one to finish. After project wrap up, I've also added a very useful, well, actually two useful actions. The first one is the confirm and update rows. This one will basically take all the content that has been translated so far and saved into the working translation memory. And the content will now be saved into the master because my master TM will be the one that I will keep probably forever. Whereas the working translation memory was related to one project only. And when that project is over, I don't wish to keep it separate. I want the finalized content to reach my main TM, and which is also the reason why I added a second action to delete the working translation memory once the content has reached the master, because I don't need to keep any duplicate content. At this point, this is the way I want to do it. And when I'm done, I will just click OK, everything will be there, and I will be able to use it over and over again. Allow me to go back to my beautiful little presentation to close off on this. The key benefits, I believe you must have seen the benefits already, but let me do a little sum up. It is so much time saved using a template because it will speed up the whole project creation. And just remember that anything that you are doing here automatically means that you don't have to do it manually for each and every project. It also helps you with consistency, of course, because having a full systemized, structured template will mean that everything is happening and created the same way, which minimizing the risk of errors, of course, or any missed steps along the way. It also helps if someone needs to take over, they will have an easier time to help their colleagues. Efficiency, no doubt. No matter how many people are creating projects, it just fast tracks the whole process for all your projects. And as you saw, customization is for you to decide how much you want to personalize, customize this whole template. You could also, of course, have different templates, but this is for you to decide really what fits your needs and go for it. And with that, I think we are right on time for QA. I will stop sharing, check the time as well. Yeah, I think we're good.
Thank you so much, Ines, for this wonderful presentation. And now let's see the questions. In the meanwhile, I would like to encourage everyone that if you have anything in your mind you would like to ask, please feel free to type those questions. So Ines, the first question. Would you mind showing us how to make the working TMs wrap up automatically, please?
So I think this came in before I ended the presentation, and I do believe I did answer that with the automated actions. If ever the question is still standing, Vicky, please write again, and I will go back to it.
Okay, thank you. The next one. Is there any reason why you don't assign double context to the master TM?
No particular reason, absolutely not. No, I decided to go this way. This is the default one. If double context is something that is useful to you, also depending on the type of files, because double context will depend also on the type of files that you work with, then you can definitely make it a double context one. But in my case, I am going with the usual one.
Thank you. The next one. Is there any case where the automatic action isn't compatible with the project I'm creating? If that happens in memoQ, does it notify us that something couldn't be done?
Good question. So if an automated action cannot be run, like for some reason, because there's no, how could I say it? The automated actions are there. There's the full list, and by default, you can use them all. Some options will not be available depending on the trigger moment that you decide to use them on, so that by default, you won't find them there. However, if you decided to use an automated action at some point and for some reason it didn't work, you will get a notification if you have, how do I say, if you have configured it. So in my template, I'll be sharing my screen again in a second. I'll just open it back. I think that's worth seeing, not just hearing me talk about it. Here we are. So if I'm here, under communication, I have automation related notifications. So I should be receiving an email if ever an automated action failed. But also inside my project, whenever a project was created with a template, you have this little type here that shows that it was. I can access it. And once I'm inside, if I go to the overview and project automation, here I have a full list of the automated actions that I should be expecting, which are coming from my template. And if I go to history right here, I will get to see what has happened and what hasn't. So you do have a lot of information that you can see. I have no notification history here because I haven't launched the project. Remember that the notifications are only launched, are only sent if you have launched your project first. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Next question. Once I have chosen a trigger and want to add the related triggers, do I have to consider a specific sequence? For example, first add action X, and then you can add any other action.
Yes, you should absolutely think about the chronologic order of the actions. The first one that you put in is the first one that will be happening, the first one that will run. That is the reason why, for example, for the project wrap-up, I've put that, of course, I want to update my master TM before I delete my working translation memory, for example, or when I use pre-translation, I want to pre-translate with my resources first and then pre-translate using memoQ AGT, for example. So yes, the order in which you define them actually has to make sense for you. And you have the little arrows if you for some reason did not put them in the right order, you don't have to remove them. You can just move them up and down depending on the priority of these.
The next one, how does automated actions are triggered? Just by the fact that you've selected your template at the start.
So the way that it works exactly, let me share again my screen. So let me go back to my template. The triggers here are exactly where it happens. So the fact that I used a template in which I have added automated actions, if here I have added automated actions for this trigger, as soon as I have imported the document, the way it says, right after document import, these 5 actions will happen. And actually, I haven't shown that, so I will go to my project to show you. All the actions that I've selected there, pre-translate with AGT. What else was there? Populate number only segments. The auto assignment that also happened because you saw that Luce and ICR are already here. But if I open a document, you'll get to see that it is fully pre-translated, either from my resources, either from AGT. You have this little robot here that says, this means that this segment was translated using an external empty tool or service. These are pre-translated from my memory. That's why I have those translation results. And further down, we also have a few, not in this one. It was probably another one, another project where I also have the purple one, which were the populate number only segments. So they do happen right after whatever is mentioned here. So after document completes workflow or after all documents complete workflow, this is when memoQ will trigger. In the case of translator delivers document, it is basically when the translator will click the deliver return envelope button. That's when it happens. I hope that was clear.
Thank you. Next question. I am really curious about the auto-assign feature. Is it possible to auto-assign to a preferred pool of linguists without first accept, so prioritizing a select few linguists per language?
So it's either you go with first accept or you have a specific user that's being pre-auto-assigned there, like I did with Lucilina. There's no in between. You would have to choose manually who to assign if you're not using first accept or one specific person, unfortunately here.
Thank you. The next one. Could you please remind us the difference between the working and master TM?
Yes, I can. Basically, there is no difference per se. The translation memory itself is the exact same TM. If you export it, it will be a TMX. It's the way that we use them that differs here, or can differ, because as I said, you could decide that your working and your master TM are one and only TM. But if you want to use two different, I'll give you a very specific example. You work with a very large team. You have a lot of people working on very different projects, and you sometimes have not so good quality translation. In that case, if you make a distinction between a working and a master, you get to say that whatever is in the working is temporary content. It probably hasn't been revised yet by anyone. It hasn't been finalized, approved. But once it gets to the master TM, then because you made it in a way that it only gets to the master once it's a final content, then that is something that you can absolutely use like with closed eyes. It's a good one. You want to go with it. And this is particularly useful, as I said, when you're in a big team, because with the translation results, you always know which translation memory the content that you are getting is coming from. So if you see that it's a working TM, you might be more careful than when you see that it's coming from a master TM. Because if you are making that distinction, then maybe it is a good way to say, okay, this might not be already very clear, so let's go with what's from the master. I hope my explanation was clear.
Thank you. Next question. Is there a plan to integrate the template creation feature to the web admin?
It is not available yet, as you understood, but it will be. When, I cannot tell you as of now. I know it is on the roadmap, but there are a few things that are a priority before we get to that item. But yes, it will eventually be there.
Next one. We are struggling with using project templates and Plunet. For some reasons, they stop working and there is an error about the GUID. Do you have any idea why this happens?
I wish I had a prepared answer for your question right now. It will probably need way more information to help you with that. So if you have a valid SMA right now, I would invite you to reach out to our support team and most probably to the Plunet team as well. And we will probably be able to help you with an answer there.
Thank you. Next one. Is there a way to use the automated actions section to avoid translating speaker notes or comments instead of using the filter configuration section?
No, for that, it's really related to the file format. So file formats are being handled by the filter configurations. Automated actions do not do anything for the automated actions themselves here from the project automation don't have anything to do with the files. However, something I haven't mentioned is that on top of automated actions, if you want to go further with some preparation automation, you can also use what we call scripts. If you are good with coding, you could basically create something yourself But otherwise, we have a dedicated teams here at memoQ, the business services team, that can help you with that. I'll give you an example. You might have an edge case where you have very complicated files, like let's pretend you have a multilingual JSON file. And by default, memoQ cannot use it as is. Then you will have a script that will prepare the document in a way that is actually usable. So it will be a transformation into a multilingual XML instead for translation purposes. And once the whole process is done, there will be a script after export that happens so that this multilingual XML comes back to being a multilingual JSON and can be used again in the original tool that it came from. So this is what you could use. Specifically for the speaker's notes and comments, I believe that the filter configurations would be your go-to. I'm not sure that we could do anything with the script, but that's something that could also be explored.
Thank you. Next one. When importing documents, is there a possibility to lock segments before the initial analysis is done? Is there a difference between how this works when managing projects in the web browser via the desktop app?
There's no difference between the two. And yes, you can lock your segments beforehand when assuming you're going with an automated action here, you can pre-translate. And as you pre-translate, before even creating an analysis report, you will be able to go to confirm and lock, and you could say, I don't know what it is that you would want to lock exactly, but let's pretend I want to lock the exact match with context, so the 101%, and I want to mark them as locked. And that way, if they're locked, and in my analysis report, I have said that I want to exclude the locked segments, then they will not be counted in my analysis. And that action you can also do manually if ever you need to.
Thank you. Next one. Is there a possibility to automate 2 passes of pre-translation analysis on project setup? In other words, first pre-translation and analysis with TMA, then second pre-translation analysis with TMA and B, without having to manually run a second analysis?
You could have 2 different pre-translation happening here. The only issue is that if you're going with A and then AB, if there are things in B that are better than in A, it will overwrite. So you could still, let me rethink your question. First pre-translation TMA, and second pre-translation analysis. Yeah, you actually can. You could have the pre-translation here, and then I'll have the create analysis report, and then I'll do a second one. Although, no, I'm lying. Not with automation. Sorry. Because when you have the pre-translation here, sorry, Sophie, for the false hope. Here at the template level, I get to decide which resources will be used, but like the type of resource. I cannot say TMA or TMB. I don't have the option to select the resources that will be used. So it could work if it was a working and then a master, or work and then reference, etc., but not with specific TMs being the same kind of resource. I hope it ended up being clear.
Thank you. Here is another question. It's a bit longer. So how many resources can we attach to a project? I merely work with LiveDocs rather than TMs, and with templates, it's tempting to attach several of them. Does that slow down the memoQ? Roughly, what a max NB of number of resources that can be attached without impacting on performance? I'm asking because I do have performance issues from time to time. Brackets, spinning wheel going on a bit when I change segment, and I have a feeling it's because I have too many resources attached.
That is very possible. I cannot give you an exact number. It is absolutely impossible to calculate because it depends. It could be coming from the amount of resources that you have. It could depend on how heavy those resources are, because it already depends on the volume. Like if they're all small, it might not be that bad. Although the more resources you have, the more memoQ will have to work harder, because it has to go through all of them when pre-translating, through all of them when doing the concordance search, for example. So a good way maybe would be to first see if you don't have some of that volume, if it's not useful anymore, if you have any duplicates, if it's old information and you don't need it anymore, maybe to do a little cleanup would help. Maybe having your TMs or LiveDocs put into one bigger one can also help. But you have to be sure that it's also maybe not entirely coming from the amount of resources that you're putting there. It could also be coming from your internet connection. That's very possible. If ever, of course, you are working online. If it's local, then it's different. But that can also impact it quite well. So I would suggest that you do a little cleanup maybe. And there's no max number of resources really that I can say is too much or not enough here.
Thank you so much. And with this question, we arrived at the end of our questions. But before we would say goodbye, I would like to share one more information with you. I would like to kindly ask you that if you have time, please rate us or give us a review on G2, as it is not a secret that we value our users' feedback and it helps us improve our product. Here's the QR code through which you can do that. Thank you so much if you do so. And with that, I would like to also thank you for joining us today. Thank you so much, Ines, for this very useful presentation. I hope it was useful for you, and I hope we will see you at one of our next webinars. Have a great rest of your days. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.